everyone to another episode of Architect Tomorrow. As you can see for this one, I've gone out with the camera on location with Eddie here. Very exciting to have a conversation with Eddie. So Eddie, welcome to Architect Tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Oliver.
Let's kick off with the world after midnight, right? Because you were very pivotal in the creation of Architect Tomorrow, whether you knew it or not at the time. I did mention you and all that sort of stuff, but you may not have seen it. The world after midnight, that concept of change accelerating and being at a point where you're really struggling to kind of keep up with the pace of change and humans' ability to comprehend it was perfect for the moment we created Architect Tomorrow.
Yes.
And we still kind of come back to that, and it feels like the world is just even more chaotic and challenging in that space. But before we get into that, I just wondered if you could maybe introduce yourself for those that don't know who Eddie is.
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Eddie Obeng, and how best to describe myself? I basically am a sense maker.
Okay.
I've done tons of research. I've done tons of jobs. I've done real jobs. I used to be an engineer once upon a time.
Okay.
I've designed offshore gas treatment systems. I've designed energy recovery systems, and basically saved companies like 90% of their energy.
Okay.
I've worked in business school. I've started my own business. I've built a digital platform called Cube, which is a whole campus world for teaching people in. I've worked with, I think it's something like 70% of the FT 100 over my career. I've written like 10 books, a couple of Financial Times bestsellers. I don't know. Ask Grok or ask Gemini. It's in
Maybe
now.
we will.
It's in
Maybe
now.
I will do that to the show notes.
Just go and
I'll say, who's Eddie Obeng and see what it comes up with. And then you can maybe tell if it's going right or wrong. But let's go back to the world after midnight then, which is probably around, I want to say it was around 2019, 2000 was when I went to, I can't remember exactly what, probably a Gartner conference or something like that, right? And it was just really fascinating. It really got me thinking. But like, where did that sort of come from? Can you remember?
So the world after midnight is hilarious because my whole point was the world's changed and people haven't noticed.
Okay.
I actually first presented that live at Ash's Business School in 1992.
Okay.
And it came off a piece of work I was doing. I was working with a couple of telecoms companies and they were being asked to do things they didn't understand. I was working for a banking company and they were trying to build SWIFT, the interbank system, and it was failing and they didn't know why. And everyone I talked to, it was quite obvious they were doing things which they thought made sense and they were getting results they had never seen before and it didn't work. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that something weird was going on. In other words, quite simply, they had a mindset of how the world changed. They had a pace to themselves, quarterly, monthly, annual. That's how they saw the world. They looked at the world they recognized. Meanwhile, everything was connecting up. There were more people on the planet. They were moving to cities. The technology was Moore's law going faster and faster. Companies had started to merge. So all of a sudden, you got to a situation where they're getting bigger. They're getting global. So if you're a CEO, normally, if you're building your company in a country, it takes 20 years to learn how to run a country. Now they're global, but in 3 months. So how the hell do you do that?
Right.
So I could see that the pace of change was accelerating, and it was basically the fruit and the seed of itself. The more change there was, the more change happened. So that gives you an exponential. If you're a mathematician, you guys do maths, okay? So it gives you an exponential. Then I looked at the pace at which we were learning and trying to understand, and I realized that there were just bottlenecks everywhere. Right. You can't go faster than your boss. You can only go as fast as a monthly meeting. You're only looking in your little box. Right. So the pace of learning is quite flat, whilst the pace of change is okay. So I pitched this, and I tried to explain to people that I thought it had happened, and if it hadn't happened to you, it would happen very soon, that the world had already flipped, but you hadn't noticed because no one rang a bell. Hence the midnight. Right. We were asleep.
Okay.
So now the world's working differently, and you're bringing all your old heuristics to this world. That was 1993. And at the time, everyone thought I was basically bonkers.
Okay. But there were some disruptions going on in the early 90s, right? I mean, because I think this helps explain why organisations sort of just get trapped and get stuck in their own way, right? I mean, I have this concept of the corporate immune system that, sort of starts to, the business sort of is almost there to sort of protect itself.
Correct.
And if an idea is too radical, the immune system pushes it out.
Yeah.
Right? And
I like that idea. I think it's even more hilarious than that. If you've ever seen wildebeest, wildebeest are funny animals.
Oh, sorry,
they're like
animals,
wildebeest,
right.
they're animals.
Yeah,
They're like beards, and they're very weird, but they run in packs, okay? And once the wildebeest start running, they're going in a direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's a better description.
Okay.
It's not so much an immune, but my view. They're running, and
It's
then
herd
you
mentality.
go, I think we should go this way. And so you go, and they nudge you back. And then you go, no, we must go this way. You do it again. And this time they just knock you over and trample you on and move on. I think it's the momentum of all the old ideas, heuristics and processes and KPIs and annual reports and stuff. They just flatten you as you go. So it's really hard for them to change direction. So my point was, the world shifted. You should be going this way. And you're not going to go. You're just going to keep going. And then you'll be surprised it doesn't work. I like the immune system one, but for me that's a bit sophisticated. I'm very much Mr. Howe, very simple.
Okay, fair enough.
Immune system. Yeah, because you've got like different immune systems. You've got bacterial immune system, then you've got one for particulates, then you've got viral one. It's very sophisticated. I like your thinking. You're obviously an architect.
Right.
You can put that bit stand.
Maybe it's a bit too complicated. Maybe I need to keep it simple. I don't know. But,
it's not for you guys. It's just for simple folk like me.
so also around the time of that conference, I got a copy of your book, Who Killed the Spark.
Okay, yeah.
It's all about innovation as well, right? So
yes,
that's why I was trying to draw on that. But give people a sense of you said you've written 10 books. You were just telling me just now, it was a great little introduction. Give us a sense of the talks of different things you've written.
Yeah, so once I twigged this, it's a really simple idea. Hockey stick in terms of change, flat in terms of our ability to learn and change. Once I twigged there was an old world where the world changed slowly and we can learn in time, and a new world, I went, that must have broken everything. So I wrote one book which was called New Rules for the New World, which was basically just trying to explain the mechanism. Because it's a bit like, you've got a stream flowing, and it's very, very clear and easy to follow, and then you've got like rapids.
Right.
And we've gone from a stream to rapids.
Okay.
And so the rules are all different. Everything works differently.
Yep.
And so I wrote News for the New World to try and explain what doesn't change in this new world. I call them patterns persisting.
Okay, the constants.
Yeah, the constants. And events come and go. So this year it's I don't know, agentic AI. Last year it was, blah, blah, blah. The events come and go.
Yeah.
But the patterns stay the same. So I try to explain there are about half a dozen patterns which stick. And if you're following those patterns, the world will be kind to you in the new world. Then I wrote one on change. Basically, once you're in the world of change, you announce, we're going to make change. And by the time you started to move, the world's moved anyway. None of your stakeholders understand what you're talking about. So I wrote All Change, which did really well. I wrote it as a sort of a story and then a textbook. So everyone read the story because it's easy.
People like stories, right?
And that was one of the bestsellers as well. And then I wrote one about re-engineering because people wanted something on processes, but they got caught up in this concept of re-engineering. And it's really about projects are where you're doing something different every day, and processes are where you're doing the same thing every day, but everyone you're associated with is doing something slightly different for you.
Right.
So stuff happens because you pass the work along. Okay. And once you're in a world of change, processes, they're a nightmare because the bottlenecks move and stuff. So I wrote that to try and explain that. The big one was I was trying to tell them at the time, because everyone's trying to rebuild their processes, and they spend ages writing them out, mapping them all out. And I went, but you're going to throw them away, so why are you mapping them out? Don't spend any money on that. Let's figure out. And it was hilarious. And then they all did that, and they'd map them out, spend all the money, and then they would obviously not have saved anything, so they then fire people. So after a very short while, people knew if anyone mentions process improvement, process engineering, you're going to get fired. So it was a movement which basically killed itself because it didn't understand what it was doing. Anyway, I wrote one on leadership, just looking at leadership. I've written one on money, which was the funniest review I ever had, which was, this book is terrible, it's just Eddie Obeng added to his own money-making machine or something like that. And I think they just didn't understand it, because I was trying to explain, one of the examples I use in the book, in the money-making machine book, is I was going through Heathrow. It's a real story. I had to buy a friend a present. And I saw Parker pens, and they're quite posh. I thought I'd get one of those. They brought the pen out to me, they opened the box, and in the box there was a pen but it was broken. Now, theoretically, what people understand when they've done accounting and stuff is, sometime in the past, Parker must have bought raw materials, which of course have the value. Then they worked on the raw materials, which adds value. They worked on them a bit more. So you end up with this added value, okay? And so that's what you're supposed to have. But my pen was broken, there's no added value. No one's going to buy it. So where's the added value gone? And when did it go? There's no added value there anyway. The model they're using goes back to the traders from Venice.
Okay.
Because when you're a trader, every trade is good, adds value. But when you're in manufacturing, processing, writing software, it's just activity. It's not until a customer actually gives you the money, you discover that you made it. So you're digging a hole. Every activity is a hole. You get to the bottom, and then the customer looks down at you and decides how long a ladder they should give you. If the ladder's too short, you can't climb out the hole. If the ladder's longer, you can climb out with a little bit extra.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to explain. And they gave this terrible reviews. Anyway, so I've written tons of books about different stuff. So I've written about people, processes, organisations, and so on. Yeah.
And so where did all this, I mean, you talked about having real jobs in air quotes and like the engineering stuff. Where did this sort of journey to becoming like a, much more of an intellectual book writer, sort of keynote talker, where do you think that, what was the story that sort of sparked that off?
I mean, I've always been interested in talking and ideas. I mean, debating and presenting and stuff like that, even from school and stuff.
Yeah.
I did chemical and biochemical engineering. I did a double.
Okay.
And that was quite interesting because suddenly you had a wide perspective, because most people do one topic. And if you do chemical engineering, you have to understand how things are made, how they're used, etc. But the physically stuff. Yeah. And if you do biochemical engineering, you have to you're making food, or you're making bacteria, or making sure they don't die. So it's quite complicated.
Yeah.
Basically, life support systems. Yeah. So it's quite so having done that, I'd actually got a sense of what was going on. And then with my doctorate, I was looking at specifically how to use some of these technologies, and I kept bumping into new ideas versus people. Okay. And then I worked for Shell, and that was fun. I was designing offshore gas treatment systems and stuff, and I started learning about people and complexity. I got this project, I started making it work. It was in a lab, I had a lab, and then one day the experiment in the lab was sabotaged. And it turns out somebody in the lab had sabotaged it because I was doing too well. And he was the guy who'd had the project before me. And I didn't know. So I didn't know about people, I didn't know about stakeholders, so now I was showing him up by being successful. Whereas I should have gone to him and asked his advice, and then he would have been my supporter.
Got him on board.
Said, exactly. I didn't know any of those things. Right. So I learned about organisations and politics and power and so on. And then I left and I worked as a consultant, so a process engineering consultant, which was it was a technology at the time which is very simple. If you have a factory, everything goes in at room temperature, everything comes out at room temperature. So why not do you need a big steam plant, and why do you need cooling water towers? Makes no sense.
Interesting.
And all around the world, everywhere had big steam tower, big steam generation and cooling towers. And the guy I was working for had come up with this very simple idea, which said, why don't we just heat the hot stuff with the cold stuff? But it turns out it's not so simple, because if you do that, because you're boiling things and so on, you can't just do it. So there's
no such thing as pure energy. You can't pure energy recovery is.
Because there's a bottleneck. There's a pinch point. So if you heat the hotter, use the hottest heat to heat everything which is above that pinch point, it works. And if you cool everything below that pinch point with the colder stuff, then it works. But if you don't know where the pinch point is, it's a disaster. It doesn't work. And so you basically would take out 70 to 80 to 90% of the energy. So I was doing that sort of thing, and then I got involved in other stuff like looking at electricity losses. Because electricity, you produce electricity, you lose it on transmission losses. So I did all that energy recovery stuff, and so that was so I had to give presentations to senior people to spend millions, and I was 20 odd something. So that sort of broadens your perspective. And then I joined Ashridge, and they gave me courses to design. I'd never done that before. And basically, that's how I got here.
But it sounds like you've just got a very curious mind.
Well, I'm very sort of naive and silly. I mean, like the thing where I went and just did the project properly in Shell instead of finding out who did it before never occurred to me. So I just get on. And also, I sort of not good at sort of bullshitting stuff. I mean, if something's wrong, I tend to say it's not right, and I might use humour, but I'm not going to let people get away with it. So it's good and bad. It's because sometimes I think I can end up intimidating because I ask people questions, and they're not used to being asked questions because
Right.
everyone, you go on a Zoom call, who's going to ask a sensible question? Everyone just sits there with bad lighting, some of them we look at their foreheads and then the hour is up and they jump to the next one. No one's going to ask, so why would that be and how?
Right.
No one's ever going to ask
Critical
that.
thinking isn't often...
You can't on a Zoom call. It's not the right format.
No. So I wanted to jump back for a moment to... I'll give you a chance to drink your tea while I'm roof ground. Your academic qualifications.
I do talk very fast, so tell people to run this video.
0.75.
No, but normally you wrap it up to 2 times.
I love it because my brain works at 1.25, right? So I'm always at 1.25 or 1.5, and everyone's like, slow down. But no, I love this. This is great. But other people, they may have a bit of a headache. So apologies.
It seems by now we've probably done a 4-hour video.
Yeah, so this is episode 3.
Sorry.
So the next question was going to be you clearly got a lot of qualifications and you did the PhD and the MBA. Which of those would you say, I suppose, has sort of helped you the most on this journey?
Wow, the qualifications.
Or was it more experiences or situations, do you think?
Qualifications are a tick.
Sure.
When I was doing my MBA, me and about a dozen other people, we set up the 50% club.
Okay.
Because we worked out that all you needed for an MBA is to get 50%.
Okay.
No one cares and we used to share the workout so we'd get 50%.
Okay.
And what we did with the time we saved was we started trying to start businesses.
Okay.
So we'd research, we tried to set up a telecoms company, we tried to set up a health company, and we all failed. But we were doing this instead of writing long essays.
Yeah, so you had the practical sort of...
Yeah, because we were doing the MBA to learn business, not to write essays.
Yes.
So, in fact, we've got our reunion dinner 2 weeks' time. So they're all old men now. It's so funny, and old women. It's hilarious. As am I. Anyway, but the thing was to do the learning. The degree was not the goal. Mm-hmm. The degree was so people would let you in through the door. And some people think the degree is the objective. No, I was doing an MBA to learn business.
Right.
I was doing a PhD to learn how to think and come up with something original. Mm-hmm. But you get that a lot these days because we have certifications for this and everyone's chasing this. They have no use to you practically, except they allow somebody to open the door for you.
The door openers.
Well, no. The thing is, the person opening the door doesn't want to get into trouble, so it covers their back. It doesn't actually open the door for you.
Right.
It just covers their back as they open the door for you.
Fair.
Okay.
Yeah. And what was your PhD in?
It was basically I was doing the effect of heat on proteins.
Okay.
In solution,
mm-hmm.
which sounds really boring, but practical thing. In the old days, when you boiled milk, it would all stick to the sides. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was the protein coming out of solution. And with most food processing, this is a problem. Because when you heat things up, proteins are really strange because they have bits of oily bits and bits of watery bits. Okay. And they organize themselves so the oily bits are in the middle, mm-hmm. and the water sees the non-oily bits, so it'll dissolve. Yeah, right. And then when you heat them up, they entangle, and then also it's oily bits, so they stick to the sides or stick to each other, and so on and so forth. And getting the maths right of the flow of... Okay, you guys are, you're architects, you understand. So when you're making stuff like that, you've got three things going on. You've got heat transfer, which is exactly the same equations as mass transfer, which is exactly the same equations as momentum transfer. Okay. When you look in the textbooks, it looks like three different things. They're all exactly the same. Okay. It's the same formula. Yeah. It's the difference between A and B divided by side, C multiplied by some factor. It's the same stuff, okay? So you've got these proteins going along, and they're being hit by the heat, but they're in a liquid, and so you're trying to guess whether you've got it too hot and they'll stick to the sides or not. So that was what I was working on in my PhD. How do you design so that things don't stick to the sides in pipes and stuff like that?
Wow, awesome. Yeah,
it's a bit. Actually, I did use it in my TED talk. Okay. Because in the TED talk, I talk about turbulent and laminar flow. I explain stuff, and then that's just and it sort of comes out. But basically, that was one of the things I actually did. Do you know what? I think
a good drop of the TED talk, because I'd almost forgotten about it. Because I've also when I talk to people about you, they rave about your TED talk, and. So what talk to me a little bit about that then, because I guess a lot of people
TED or
I mean, is that just where someone comes and taps you on the shoulder? Or does it mean you look like you're a good speaker.
No, so what happened? Well, so half and half. So I was working with a company called IDEO. It's a design company. Basically, what happened was, the long story is a chap called Colin Burns, and he came to a gig I was doing in London. Okay. And the reason he came to the gig was because in IDEO, they were running projects and they were falling out with each other, and he come to find out ways of doing it. So I started working with IDEO, and I helped them in Palo Alto and so on and so forth, helping them to actually rethink. And so a lot of my, if you're in the design world, you'll hear people talking about things like foggy projects and paper numbers. That's all my stuff. But designers talk about it because they went through IDEO, then those people moved on. And, yeah. So it's quite funny, really. So people come up to me and say, well, that's a foggy project. Oh, that's interesting. I invented that. Oh, no, you didn't. I learned that by design course. You know, it's all very funny. The world is a funny place. Anyway, so Colin, one of Colin's mates was a chap called Tim Brown, who was running the business. And I was just talking about, what I was doing. And he knew the people at TED, because TED was Technology, Education, and Design. Yeah. And so I got a call from Bruno Guessiano, I can't remember his name, and he basically said, we're doing this thing, and we think you're and so I got invited. And it's really unusual for a sort of consultancy type, educator type, commercial person to do a proper TED talk.
It's more academics.
Yes, academics, designers, and so on. Yeah. And they hate consultants, they hate people, because most of them go and sell. Right. I think the only proper business people they had by the time they had me was Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and then me. That's about it. Everybody else was of a different format. Yeah. So that's how it happened, and I wanted to explain this new world to people. Yeah, yeah. Let's come back to that new world, because I think as architects, I'm really keen that we think about this new world. And let's face it, unfortunately, the last few years have proved that technology and systems thinking doesn't always lead us in the preferable direction, right? And so what I'm really trying to do with the community is trying to get us to sort of pause, stop, reflect, and think about the sort of maybe some of the adverse outcomes of some of the innovation and some of the things we're thinking about. So have you got any sort of thoughts for architects and systems thinkers about sort of those trade-offs, that sort of finding that, I think the word for me is pragmatism. Yes. Do you have thoughts on how we kind of reach that sort of pragmatic sort of approach? Yeah, I do. I've got lots of thoughts about that. So there's a number of things. I talked about new rules for the new world, and there are a lot of thinking mistakes people make. Okay. And then I've also talked about the importance of understanding what you're aiming at, and it's not the paper, it's not the certificate, because paper never refuses ink, so you can write anything on it. Right. Okay. So let's start with the thinking mistakes. So a lot of the old world ideas. You can carry on, and people will say great, and they'll even say this is benchmark and leading edge, but they're all just gibberish. So, and people have, part of what's happened in the world also is persuasion skills have gone up, so marketing skills have gone up. So if you take something like, I don't know, the word sustainability, okay? So nobody knows what, I'm just being rude, nobody knows what it means. In fact, the first time I tripped over it was an insurance client of mine talking about sustainability, and I thought, my mum was an environmental biologist, parasitologist, so I grew up. And in my world, sustainability was ecosystems. Right. And that's what I'd grown up with a kid listening to my mum talking about. And when you have an ecosystem, there's a heavy level of complexity, and it's not necessarily stable as in on the table stable, okay? It might be stable as in the middle of a bowl, going from one side to another. Right. But it's probably not stable on the top of a mountain, because that goes up and never comes back. So there's 3 levels of sustainability. They were talking about sustainability of their profits, by the way. Right. So when people say sustainability, I smile, because I know they haven't thought through what the etymology is, what actually that is. Yeah. And then they all imagine it's stable as in flat on the table. So they're all trying to make systems which are, recyclable, and we'll get back where we were. Right. Those are not useful. What's more useful is what I call dynamic stability, which is the spinning top. You hit a spinning top, and it's rotating, but stays upright. It's that balance. It's the balance. Yeah. And a spinning top in the bowl, fantastic, because it can move around, and that's what you're aiming for. But if you're designing, you have to understand that you're designing something which must be resilient. Yes. You're not designing something which is a point solution. So adaptive, emergence. Correct. Right. Okay. Right. And it has to be suitably complex, otherwise it doesn't restabilize. Okay. So the reason we're here, and capitalism has worked for us, and we're drinking tea out of. You imagine if capitalism didn't exist, that would have been like a craftsman's life for 20 years to be able to make that.
Right.
First of all, he has to go and find the glazing, so he has to go up some mountain and chip a thing, and then and the tea has to be grown, so somebody's got to learn how to be a farmer. And here I am, capitalism, I just take it for nothing. And the reason it works is because everyone's allowed to do what they're doing, and then we thank them by giving them what we're doing.
Right. There's an exchange of value.
Exactly, but it's not controlled. And so things emerge which are useful to people. And as long as everyone in that system has the mindset of, I'm doing this, but I'm doing it to serve my fellow man. Because if I serve them well, they'll serve me. Everything works.
Unfortunately, we've seen that that's not always the case.
It gets distorted by in two ways. One is if somebody decides to govern it.
Okay.
Because they basically distort them out. Guardrails, they'll kill you. They'll always kill you. Because there isn't any spare in this system. Everyone's working really hard. So if you put guardrails and you're stealing from someone, who are you stealing from? And then my model runs the investment of innovation. It's called the Sparks model from the book for the UK. I don't know whether you know that. That's how they distribute money for. Okay. And it was a real battle because they'd go, well, I don't know, cups, that's an emerging market. We should give them more money for innovation. And so you're the one in the basement doing the work on the cup. Okay? Suddenly the government announces innovation grants for cups. I'm not interested in cups, but I want the money. I've got the time to write the proposal. So I get the money and I come and compete with you. And so by giving money to help a fledgling part of an industry, you literally destroy it.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm coming to the pragmatism.
Yeah.
And so what I had to do was almost draw out the journey for them. I use these things called bubble diagrams to say, this is what you do, looks good.
Okay.
Then this is the reaction from other people, looks good. Then this is what is then you have this unexpected outcome.
Yeah.
And then you have to intervene again, and now you're chasing your tail, and then it's a disaster. Is this where you want to end up? I have a tool called future mapping.
Okay.
And so I map out for them.
Yeah.
And I go, is this really what you want to go? And they go, no, we don't want that. And I go, well, you have to remove this intervention. And so, my very humble opinion, almost everything governments do is bad.
Interesting.
They starve us.
Okay.
Because they're taking the money and they can never spend your money, which you got from providing service, as well as you do. And so, literally, everything governments do is just impoverishes everyone.
Wow.
Because they go in and waste
That's
it.
a very interesting, I'd say quite radical thought. But
so that's one reason that the thing breaks. And then the other thing it breaks is if you get a warlord or a group of people who decide to basically stomp on everyone else. So you can only stomp on everyone else if you get a cartel or if you have a particular niche. And so what used to happen in real life was you'd get a cartel and then all the others would boycott you or beat you up or whatever it is. But these days everything's global. So you can build a global horrible cartel and then it becomes horrible. But you can't fix it with government because that will also kill you. So it's all fascinating.
So do you have an answer?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it lies in the fact that, I mean, if people understand that the whole point of our joyful lives is just to serve other people, then imagine I'm going to go and work for one of these horrible companies which is a global monopoly. I mean, you're going to work for, you're really good at what you do. And you have a choice of a salary like that to work for a global corporation which is going to destroy everyone's lives, or a salary like this which will actually free people and serve everyone. You're the best. If you work for them, life gets worse. So you go, to hell with you, I'm going with these guys. And if people understand that service model, they won't be able to get their talent. They won't be able to. And we do it from within. So yeah, it's solvable, but people think.
But it requires people to have conscious and be more conscientious about where they.
Well, it's self-preservation.
Okay.
Because if you are in a market or a world where there are powerful people and you're helping them, you think you're getting more money, but in the long term, your kids, your grandchildren, they will suffer. It's self-preservation, not to work for bastards.
But I don't think that's a commonly understood.
No, because the narratives are all capitalism is bad. People who are rich, they got rich because they stole from someone. It's not true. It just provided better service. And there's this view that if everything's the same and we all share it together, it'll be fine. We'll all be happy. And even Elon Musk, he talks about age of abundance. and how everything will be. And I just go, you're building rockets. You wake up in the morning because you're excited to build rockets. If you didn't build rockets, you would take drugs and die.
Right.
And you're looking at all the rest of us, and you're saying you have abundance, so you don't have to have purpose in your life, because it's just ludicrous.
Nonsense.
So we have this very silly idea. Gatsad calls them parasitic mind viruses.
Okay.
And they fill people's heads. And so we don't understand the very simple thing, which is when people serve each other, everyone grows, everyone benefits, everyone looks after everyone else. Everything's good.
And I think there's possibly a lack of sort of critical thinking, and where I point the finger is education. I just think that, you know,
who provides the education to most people? Could it be like centralized? If you didn't have that, you'd have lots of different schools teaching lots of people different things.
Right.
There would be a lively marketplace.
So you're saying more self-organisation, more competition.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
more like the natural ecosystem where you
the natural ecosystems which have kept going for billions of years. Not all the elephants were exactly the same.
Right.
And anyway, there were more than just elephants. There were rhinoceroses and there's grass and our GCSE standard is everyone must be an elephant. It's just so silly.
But do you not think sort of some of the deadly sins like greed cause the model?
No, greed is good.
Okay.
I hate to say that. I know it's the worst phrase, and there was a film. But let me explain. It's not greed.
Okay.
If I'm serving you, and I'm doing a great job, and you reward me, great. If I want more, what do I have to do? I have to serve you better.
Right.
So when you say greed, it's the stealing greed. That's the bad one. It's the greed where I'm not giving you anything, and I ripped you off.
Yeah.
But if I'm saying I want to provide for my kids so they'll go to bed with full bellies, that's also getting stuff from you.
Yeah.
But that's the good one.
Yeah.
And again, they conflate the two, and they mix the crime in with the empathetic positive.
I guess where I struggle with this, I mean, it's a really fascinating conversation which I knew it would be. The externalities for me just don't seem to be priced into externalities of our system, capitalist system, don't seem to be priced in, right?
Well, we don't have a capitalist. We have not had a capitalist system for a long time.
So you're basically saying because of the intervention,
we started with intervention. The intervention seemed to make sense in the early days of government.
Yeah.
What would happen is, let's say you were doing fish and you needed more fish, and someone was growing corn, and they were looking at it at a country level, because the countries were a realm, and you put the defences around the realm. And so they went, well, let's go together to a place called Parliament, and we'll discuss how we protect the fish and the corn. And so you'd come from your village on horse for 3 days, okay? And so that was not too bad, because you'd argue your case, and you say, we'll give you more fish if you give us more corn, ka-ching. And then sometimes you get into the meeting and you'd lose. You say, let's vote, and they'd go, no, we're not doing fish. And so you went, if I sit with the corn guy and we make a deal, then we'll always vote together. So they invented political parties. The moment they had political parties, the people in the government no longer represented the villages they came from. They represented the political parties. That's why a political party has an agenda and it has a manifesto. Because if it really represented people, they wouldn't do that, would they? Because people would tell them what they wanted.
And what's fascinating
so 170 years ago, that was the end of democracy in terms of parliamentary representation. It's just been a nonsense ever since then.
But what I was going to say is that interestingly now with technology, there is a way to represent.
Of course! That's what I keep telling you. It's been like that since the 90s. We have the technology. We're building AI to tell us answers, but we can connect, we can talk to each other, we can vote, we can bring our experience. And instead of using the human side, we're using this automated thing, slop thing. Bizarre. So we've got off piece. This is
No.
But for me, that's why I built Cube. Cube is a collaborative environment. Why? Because you and I are talking, so we're doing like maybe 200 words per minute, okay? And if you have an organisation, it has a bottleneck. So the senior guy's making decisions, you've got to get the information to them. And you can't talk any faster, so you use PowerPoints and things like that. But there's a bottleneck, because the data can flow much faster. Whereas human beings, if we can think together, we can think at the speed of light. So when I built Cube with collaboration, we have things like, okay, we're going to come up with ideas. We'll all put digital stickies on the whiteboard simultaneously. Why? Because you can read as other people are typing. So all of a sudden you're thinking together. So now your activities at the speed of thought, not the speed of speech, or the speed of a letter on a horse.
I mean,
and so we can connect so much better.
A well-facilitated workshop like that is incredible. So yeah, I mean but that should
be every day. All organisations should be built that way.
Yeah.
You know, but so we could do it, but again, yeah. So anyway, so that's.
Well, we've gone deep, and I love it. I love it.
You can.
Yeah.
It's so easy to. I've been working
Yeah.
on Cube since 2010.
Okay.
Before that, I was doing other methods for communication and collaboration and stuff like that. And you can do it. You can bring people together. You can take a lot of the ego stuff out because the ego gets in the way and stuff like that. You can take language stuff out because if they're not speaking the same language, they're always happier to write than to speak. You can take introvert extroverts. Introverts are amazing. They have superpowers. They can meet somebody and know everything about the person, read their aura. But they won't say a word. Extroverts, completely different superpowers. But introverts, on something like Cube, where your avatar is just a square box, they'll contribute, they'll talk, they'll move things around, they'll do it. Real face-to-face, they'll sit there and not say a word. So you can then tap basically 30 to 40% extra resource. And you can run your country based on that. Why would you not do that?
Yeah.
And this is...
Well, I guess it's powerful sort of resisting forces that, or traditions or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's
cartels.
There's cartels. When you go, the cartel, the wildebeest running, and then everyone go, and then you try and change, then the wildebeest run you over. There's another cartel. It's a big wildebeest. So that's basically it. But these things are not complicated to fix.
Right.
They're not even difficult problems.
But yet we still are trapped.
The hard part is escaping your assumptions, having the courage to learn something new, talking to people, but without your ego in the way, and then getting on and acting. And that's the hard part. But the problems themselves are all trivial. All the problems in the world are trivial. They're all completely trivial.
Interesting. It's just politics that gets in the way.
Well, it's not just politics, fashion, cartels. Just misunderstanding. One of my favourite stories, I said this thing about all the problems are trivial. And somebody said, what about climate change? I said, I solved that in an afternoon a couple of years ago. So they laughed like you're laughing because they thought I was joking. Well, stories. I was trying to sell Cube to the Scottish government, okay? And this pre-lockdown madness. So I was trying to explain to them how working virtually, basically you have your office, real physical, other one, okay? You have your whole organization. You can, 2 clicks, you can be anywhere with anyone, and you can be working as if you're shoulder to shoulder, okay? And you can, even if you're in a meeting together, you can put your 2 laptops on, and you can work on the same whiteboard, and then when you go elsewhere, it's still there. So I was trying to sell, and I was making a diagram to show how much they would save in terms of carbon and energy and stuff. And I was drawing this diagram, showing somebody coming out of their house, getting into a car, then into a train, and then into whatever it is, and then all the way there. And I was thinking to myself, that's fascinating. Every single one of those places has space heating. You know what space heating is? We heat the air with a radiator or a blow heater. Okay. And I just come back from skiing like 2-3 months ago, and we used to love skiing, and you'd be out of -10, -20 all day. You didn't burn a single carbon. You don't.
Okay.
When you're skiing, you're out of -20, and you're like, how is that possible? Because you're dressed right. Okay? So I was sitting there looking at this thing, I was thinking, I wonder how much energy gets burned just in space heating.
Okay.
Could I find the data? Could I heck? Because all the data on carbon CO2 generation was all blame data. Because the model in people's mind was blame model. Australia does this, UK does this, all blame. Not cause, not how. You ask me about how and why. So not what's created it, but whose fault is it?
Right.
I dug, and then I found a couple of charts which broke down the energy used by
It's like a Sankey diagram, isn't it?
Of course. Not by who's doing it. In terms of, I think it's 15%, don't quote me, of the energy is space heating.
Can believe that. Yeah.
Which is like 10 times the Paris Climate Accord, which is going to take 10 years. And I went, great, so I can ski all day, not burn a carbon. I come to my house, I come to my office, I turn off the heating, heat up the air, it goes out through the windows. That's batshit crazy. So I went, what if I dress properly? So I went and had a look, and you can buy jackets with batteries in them which keep you warm. And in fact, we did that for several years and just turned off the heating in this place. And basically, you solve climate change by just persuading everyone to dress differently. And all you need is a celebrity or a designer who designs the really stylish.
Makes it fashionable.
This is my no zero jacket with a double. And they would, oh, I want one of those. 18 months, everybody, including even grannies and granddads, will be wearing it.
Yeah.
And all the heating will be off in all the houses.
Well, we got close to that with the hoodie, with the cost of living crisis and heating, the gas going up.
Yes,
people
well,
wearing hoodies, but yeah,
that's
we're
right.
nearly there.
That's right.
Yeah,
But you could have done it like 10 years before. The whole point is it's a trivial problem, which was handed to people who were worried, who then passed it on to politicians, who then passed it on to whose fault is it.
Right.
And then the whole conversation at a global level did not involve engineers, architects, designers, problem solvers.
But let's go back to externalities for a moment. Sorry, I love it, but I want to tease you thinking a bit more here, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at the sort of impact that sort of chemical pollution and various. So you're your designer, you know this very well, right? Given you started talking about the chemical processes and stuff that you've helped organisations design. Unfortunately, and this is where you can correct me, often it's cheaper to do something quite wastefully or get rid of the waste, flush the waste product into the local water system, than sort of do it in a regenerative fashion or do it in a fashion that's more sustainable. I do struggle with going back to that. Like,
so let's go back to people actually paying attention and serving each other. And you've made a factory which is killing all the fish.
Yeah.
Okay, and you haven't yet got a cartel, and you haven't got a government license. You're not going to be in business for very long. Part of what happens,
people will protest or boycott you, or
the reason you can do it is because you have a protection.
Yeah.
The protection comes from government licenses, and it comes from legal system and media.
Right.
The media, because you tell us we're storytelling animals, So the story you tell is my factory is going to feed everyone cheaper.
Right.
And then it's on the banners, and he's making a factory cheaper. And so we go, why are the fish dead? So you buy protection, whether it's PR. So it's a racket. So it's not, the externalities are part of the corruption of the working system. They are not the working system.
But do you not need some rules and some governance to ensure that some of that... I love your sort of idealistic view that
you all have rules.
We took everything away.
No, you all have rules.
They have rules.
Don't imagine that if we were living in a village and you suddenly poured, I don't know, waste asbestos all over the farm.
Yeah.
Don't think that they wouldn't all come and beat you up.
Right.
Of course there are rules.
Right.
People can self-govern.
Yeah.
So to understand what's going on, you have to be able to see what's going on. So you need metrics and measurements. And then you need transparency. And unless people are suicidal, usually they'll get together and they'll stop the person who's destroying everything.
I feel like we're beautifully coming on to cybernetics here.
Are you coming for the 3 laws?
Are
we going Asimov?
Well, no, sorry.
The problem is the scale.
Yeah.
When you're at a village scale, you can see everything. When you're at a town scale, you can see everything. Don't forget, across Britain, every town had a charter.
Okay.
So they have their rules. This is what we do in this town.
Right.
So this town, we only eat corn. This town, every town had a charter. If you didn't like it, you went somewhere else.
Right, okay.
And then, again, scale, government, we're going to have the same rules everywhere.
Okay.
And once you do that, you've basically screwed everything up. The scale is too big. The scale's too big. It doesn't work. Nobody can influence it. Then you can take backhand. Every large system gets corrupted. Of course it does. Because it can't change as fast as the world is changing around it.
So smaller, more self-determination.
It's not so much smaller. It's scaled.
Okay.
Scaled for transparency. It's not the size which is important.
Yeah.
It's the scale and transparency. And then within that, you need to have an ability for people to organize and actually overturn something which is unjust.
Right.
Now, some of that people knew how to do because they grew up with things like the 10 Commandments in their heads. And the 10 Commandments say, don't steal. So if the bank's nicking money, people go, you're a bad bank, we are stealing, no one's banking with you.
Right.
And then we got rid of all those rules. We said, we don't believe in all that old-fashioned stuff. So the banks nick all the money.
Leverage ratios.
Economic collapse. Some of it's funny, you have to admit.
Well, you have to laugh, obviously cry about it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So yes, in terms of what you're describing, in terms of the complexity of externalities, it's scale.
Okay.
And you know what scales work because the scales link to human beings. And if you can't manage that set of activities, then the scale is too large. And most scales for most things are too large. That's why somebody would try and sell it cheap and pollute, because they can get away with it, because they're probably selling it cheap in this country and polluting in that country. And then we've got some things wrong also with the way in which we do financial transactions, because you only pay your tax on your profits.
Okay.
So you don't pay the tax on your actions. So there's some
that's kind
stuff
of
which is a bit silly.
That's the bit in terms of government I was thinking about when you were talking about that this government gets in the way. I think
that's governance, not government.
So okay.
It's the rules we use to organise ourselves.
Yeah, I still struggle a little bit with how that works without something sort of. But that's probably because I've been.
Do you have kids?
Yes.
Do you have you're the senior person, I don't know, you're probably married, you've got a wife, so are you the VP and then she's the senior vice president and the children, so that you have to have rules? Of course not. You work as a single unit, interdependent, everyone brings what they bring. That's how human beings are. The assumption you need some external thing to put you in your box,
that's a shared story.
Just nonsense. It's just nonsense. When you go out drinking with your mates, you don't go, right, okay, so these are the rules on this thing, and by the way, there's the of course not, you have a laugh, you remember the last things you did, sometimes you pay, sometimes they pay, I've been paying all the rounds, you work it out. So a lot of the things which you imagine you need to get people to work together and live together, you really don't. A lot of it is transparency. If you can see what people are doing, they tend not to be able to cheat so much.
So radical transparency.
Yeah, you've got 8% of psychopaths, so you always have to watch out for them.
Sure.
Okay, so as long as you understand that, and in the old days, they knew who the psychopaths were. It was either the village idiot who was going to come and eat all the apples, or they knew the people to avoid, or the villagers would sharpen their.
Or the people you wouldn't do business with because
yeah. So, but at a global level, it's quite hard to find the psychopaths. A lot of the stuff we do, it doesn't work. It really doesn't, and impoverishes everyone.
Wow.
You can always spend your money better than someone else can spend it for you.
Interesting. Yeah.
Or you think? Oh, if you don't agree, I'm happy to spend your money for you.
No, I get it on a it just feels like a very self-centered argument, but that's just my conditioning.
No,
that's just the story.
But it is self-centered because the best thing for me is for you to thrive, because you're really good at architecture and crap. So when I need somebody to do architecture, I need you. I'm good at speaking.
Yeah.
So it's not a disaster if we are supporting each other, if we are actually in an ecosystem.
So there's a big if there, but that's I guess that's a condition. That's a conditioning thing, isn't it? I've seen a world that's not working that way, and therefore.
Well, the world. Don't forget, I explained that Parliament, for example, got disconnected 170 years ago. It has nothing to do with us. It's its own machine. The people we send to represent us, they don't know who we are.
So if we had a cube-like system for representative democracy, that could potentially turn the corner on some of this stuff.
That's why I'm always interested in collaboration and working, and they'd all be different. Everyone would have different, in the same way as every town had a different charter, everyone would do different things. And as long as you understand what you're doing and people are growing up and paying attention, there will be bits which don't work. But you can actually work with, I'm not a communist, you can work with people striving and benefiting. And if somebody does something great for you, of course you pay them more, because it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
merit-based system.
Yeah. But if you are taking, if you haven't got an understanding of interdependence, then it's quite difficult. That's not what you want to talk about at all. We've got way off.
No. I think the reality is the reality is the systems that we design are operating in a political system, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we have to unpack that, and I don't shy away from that. I know some people go, "Oh, can't talk about politics."
No, you
have to face into it because it's the reality.
Yeah, and the right-left stuff it's not. That's not.
It's a divisive tool, right?
Yeah. And it's not real because there are very few natural systems which are just two points.
Yeah.
I mean, magnetism. Right. But apart, you get into real ecosystems, they are so complex.
Yeah.
And they go, it's left or right. They go, no, don't be so silly.
Yeah.
That's for children.
Yeah.
So, it's just going to be nonsense. Did I say that out loud? Yeah, it's going to be nonsense. I say that all the time.
So we've skirted around this one, but This is the question from Selena, actually. I think you and Selena probably get on
Yeah.
really well. But her question to you is that she thinks that your approach is quite naturally cybernetic.
Yes.
I'm curious about what he thinks about more sustainable adaptability. But I think we've already
Yeah,
talked a lot about
Yeah,
this.
you have to. So what happens is, as human beings, we can't deal with as many variables as natural systems.
Mm-hmm.
So we pretend we're building complex systems, and they're really quite simple systems.
Okay.
Okay, and then we become the god of our own simple system and think it can resolve everything, which of course it can't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our biggest headache, and if you're doing commercial purposes or even non-commercial, you want to ensure a level of quality, you want to ensure a level of control around it, an ability to predict it.
Yeah.
And that level of control which a human brain can deal with is not complex enough for a real complex system. And that's why things like free trade and so that works because nobody can understand all of it. So it can be incredibly complicated. You know, I was joking about the cup and stuff, but you've got a camera there. Somebody came up with that. I would never sit and go, I need to make a digital camera. No, it never come into my mind.
It's that collective endeavour and
and the overlap and then discovery and then having the transfer. So that very much is the game. We will never be able to deal with the complexity as individuals, which we can deal with by being disconnected and semi-connected individuals.
Interesting.
And that's why organizations sometimes struggle, because they build the organization chart and they try and give people clear goals, and everyone does what they're supposed to do and meets their KPIs, and the business falls over.
Yeah, doesn't allow for the emergent stuff to happen.
Doesn't allow for the emergent stuff, because the emergent stuff, I don't know, someone junior discovers X, I don't know, and then they want to pass it on. There's no time to pass on. The boss isn't interested. Aren't you doing your job? It's hard to get in. And anyway, once you build those pyramid structures, they've got a bottleneck, because you can only get your 200 words per minute to the senior 10 decision makers. So,
This has been fascinating. I'm super pleased that you said yes. Generally, I love conversations like this.
I don't know if that's what you wanted to cover.
No.
Other stuff. I mean, I could talk about anything.
So the last thing I wanted to wrap up with was advice for those people operating in this sort of corporate, complex political world where they are. We come back to that sort of. I think you touched on this a little bit already, but kind of. Do you have any sort of tips and thoughts for people that are kind of facing into these sort of complex, challenging decisions? And there needs to be a bit of bravery there, a bit of challenging the groupthink, the herd mentality we've touched on. But what else would you sort of say to people in closing?
So if I was saying anything useful, I hope it's useful. But the first most important thing is you.
Okay.
So you have to decide whether your goal is to contribute.
Right.
Or whether you're there to bullshit, or whether you're there to steal, or anything else. You have to decide. And if you've decided to contribute, then it gets easy. Because from here on, everything you do, you know is the right thing to do. Doesn't mean it's what the organization wants you to do, or your customers want you to do, but you know it's the right thing to do. So, then the question is, how do you go about doing the right thing? Okay. So, when you're dealing with situations, with things, it's much simpler. Because you look at the situation, and the best way of dealing with the situation is not to deal with the events which come at you, but to spend some time looking at the underlying patterns and underlying causes. Okay? So you might have 3 or 4 conversations. I don't know, we're struggling to get this particular architecture, and the company client's doing this. Well, what's the cause? I have a tool called the bubble diagram, which will allow you to map causalities to understand. And even in a complex system, there are rarely ever more than half a dozen things you really should focus on.
Right.
And if you focus on those, you always have all the time in the world. If you focus on all the events evaporate, patterns persist.
Right.
Okay? So having an ability to do that, having the time or the focus to do that is really, really, really important. So that's about things. Then about the people. On the people side, the really important thing is just to remember that they are human like you. And to always be trying to do things which will help them. Okay? I know I've got to get my career and stuff, but the reality is, if you can help other people, often it'll come back and help you anyway. But you look at it from a stakeholder point. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to achieve, and so on. Then you need also some tricks and techniques, like how do I bring an idea forward? So, for example, one of my tools I have hundreds of these tools. It's called issue data question build.
Okay.
And it's a way of bringing a new idea without bumping into other people in a big fight. I call them PETs, people engagement tools, performance enhancement tools, and so on. Okay, so what happens? If somebody suggests something to you, if you haven't come up with it on your own, your brain basically panics. It treats it as a change, something is going to eat me, and it can't go in.
Yeah.
But questions work. If you ask someone a question, it triggers a different part and it goes after it. So issue data question build is you lining up to the person. So you say, have you noticed how this particular project is multinational or pan-dimensional? Or so you raise what the issue is as something they recognize. Then you provide data. Oh, for example, this took me 2 weeks and we got to work on that. More concrete the data, the better. Hard and soft, it doesn't matter. So now they nod because they recognize what you're talking about. Then you come in with a question. How should I do this? How would you do it? How should we approach this? When you ask a question, the good thing about human beings is a bit in your brain starts to try and answer the question. That bit in your brain is the same bit which makes you fall in love with the idea and turn it into more money or more food. So you ask a question and now they're engaged. And then you shut up, and as they start to answer it, then you can join in the dialogue. It's called issue data question build.
Seeding the thing. Right.
Yeah. So you're seeding it, and then don't get precious and try and take all the ownership of that.
Right.
Okay.
Part of the ego.
Yeah, which people do. Okay, but that's an exchange. So now we're back to everybody's contributing. We're back to what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
So that's really important because that allows other people to own your idea, you to own other people's idea, and to come up with a creative solution.
And truly collaborate.
So the people engagement bit is really important. How you engage the people, I've given you one tool. The system, understanding the system is really important, and then pulling it together and then allowing people to take ownership, because then they do the work. If it's just you have to do all the work.
Yep.
Okay, so things like using lots of questions, because questions trigger in people's minds the answer, and your brain actually falls in love with your own answers and then tries to turn them into more food. So hunter-gatherer thing. But then you also check that what you're doing isn't going to destroy the bigger situation.
Okay.
So you have to do a bit of a future map.
Right.
And that's on you. And the future map is to say, okay, well, if I do this, well, what happens next? So, I was just, earlier on I was saying, well, what happens next? So it's go into the future, see whether you're happy with the outcome of what you're doing, and then move from there. So I would say that part of the headache we have at the moment is, especially with architecture and things like that, is everyone's speaking a slightly different language.
Yeah.
People have forgotten they're all connected. There's a lot of pressure on people to try to be the one who comes up with the answer.
And to deliver now. And
delivering now.
Yeah.
Events evaporate, patterns persist. And that's why we look for the pattern. We look for the pattern and we engage the people, and they bought into and own it, you get progress. If you rush after the events, they come and go, next step, and you can never really ever make anything substantial. So that would be the sort of thing I would suggest. I mean, I've got tons of these tools like the issue data question, IDQB. They're called PETs, people and get performance enhancement tools. So the best way to find them, if you look for Eddie Obeng and look up for PETs, you'll probably find them. Otherwise, you can email me.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff which I do also about things like change, again, I've saw in the books, you can have a look. I mean,
we'll signpost a bunch of things for people to find your stuff.
But the reality is, if you actually have decided that you are the person who's going to be the one who's going to drive this process, just drive it. We're all here, it's an adventure. The funny part of this adventure is, for all, I believe, all of us, it probably started several billion years ago, because life never ends, it just continues. Dead things don't give rise to living things. So you are actually a couple of billion years old.
We're all made of stardust, right?
We're all made of stardust. Then we started, we're all the same age, because we started at the same point. Correct? Okay, we're all the same age. And then you get to this point after billions of years, and your chance to do something which would be great, don't screw it up. Don't screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that would be my last comment.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm sure we could, if you allow me, we could talk for ages. But no, that's been fantastic. It's been a wide-ranging conversation, which I hoped it would be. And we covered the things I wanted to talk about, but we went down some rabbit holes, which was fantastic. So Eddie, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks.